The ocean hides more than just mystery. It guards the secrets of an ancient civilization that vanished without a trace. Atlantis, a land of unmatched power, advanced technology, and divine wisdom, may not be a mere myth. What if its true legacy has been concealed for millennia, waiting to be uncovered? Across time, the search for Atlantis has captivated explorers, philosophers, and dreamers alike, sparking curiosity about what happened to this lost world and whether its knowledge could still shape our future. Could the answers lie beneath the waves, in the shadows of forgotten ruins, waiting to be rediscovered? The ocean has always been a source of fascination and mystery for humanity. It covers more than 70% of the Earth's surface, yet much of its depths remain unexplored, a vast, incomprehensible expanse that hides secrets both ancient and modern. In the year 360 BC, the philosopher Plato wrote about a land beyond the reaches of human civilization, an advanced, powerful empire that once existed but was lost to the waves in a single, catastrophic event. This was Atlantis. It was a civilization of unparalleled knowledge and power, a utopian world that existed thousands of years before his time. But what if it wasn't just a story? What if there is more to this myth than we have ever been told? What if the tales of Atlantis, told and retold through the ages, are not just remnants of ancient imagination, but the echoes of a real, sunken civilization? What if Atlantis was not a fable or a dream, but a historical reality that was deliberately hidden from the world for millennia? Could its secrets, its knowledge, its very essence still be influencing us today, even though it was lost beneath the waves long ago? The story of Atlantis has captivated the human imagination for centuries. Plato's dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, remain the cornerstone of our understanding of Atlantis, but even Plato himself seems to leave us with more questions than answers. According to Plato, Atlantis was a vast island situated beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. He described it as an advanced civilization with a powerful army, unparalleled engineering, and a rich cultural legacy. Its capital city was a marvel of architecture with grand temples, vast waterways, and colossal structures. The Atlanteans were a proud people, wise in their sciences and in their governance. But over time, they grew corrupt. As their power grew, so did their arrogance, and eventually, the gods decided to punish them. In a single day and night, Atlantis was swallowed by the sea, vanishing without a trace. But Plato's account is cryptic, and it raises as many questions as it answers. Did he write about a real event, or was he crafting a cautionary tale, a metaphor for the fall of nations? His mention of Atlantis may have been intended to explore the moral decline of a civilization that was once virtuous but became decadent over time. However, some scholars and historians argue that Plato's account is not fictional at all, but rather a true historical record of a lost world. What if Plato was not simply telling a story, but was preserving a warning, a piece of knowledge handed down through generations that pointed to a forgotten civilization? A civilization that at one point shaped the course of history. As with many ancient tales, Atlantis was quickly relegated to the realm of myth and legend. Over the centuries, the story became distorted, embellished, and intertwined with other cultural myths of sunken cities and lost civilizations. Yet, some persistent clues seem to suggest that Atlantis was more than just a myth. Throughout the ages, explorers, scientists, and researchers have tried to piece together the truth behind Atlantis, scouring the earth and the sea for any trace of this mysterious civilization. Their search has led to fascinating discoveries, some of which raise the possibility that Atlantis might not be lost at all, but simply hidden beneath layers of history, perhaps buried under the sea, waiting for someone to uncover its secrets. The idea of a sunken city is not unique to Plato. Ancient cultures from around the world have their own tales of civilizations swallowed by the sea. In the Middle East, the story of the biblical flood in the book of Genesis tells of a world wiped away by water, and the survivors of that catastrophe building a new world from the ashes. Similarly, The ancient Sumerians spoke of a great flood that wiped out an entire civilization, and the Greeks and Romans also recorded stories of cities disappearing beneath the ocean. These flood myths are strikingly similar in many respects, and some theorists believe they all stem from a common source, a global catastrophe that occurred long before recorded history. In more recent times, researchers have pointed to strange, underwater formations around the world as potential evidence of ancient, sunken cities. The most famous of these is the so-called Bimini Road off the coast of the Bahamas, where a series of perfectly rectangular stones lie submerged beneath the waves. Some claim these stones are remnants of an ancient man-made structure, possibly a road or an aqueduct, built by the Atlanteans. Similar underwater formations have been discovered off the coast of Japan, in the Caribbean, and in the Mediterranean, leading some to speculate that Atlantis could have been spread across several regions, its civilization existing in multiple places around the world. Perhaps most intriguing of all are the ancient maps that have surfaced over the centuries, some of which seem to depict land masses that no longer exist, submerged beneath the ocean. The most famous of these is the Piri Reis map, created in 1513 by the Turkish admiral and cartographer Piri Reis. The map shows parts of South America, Africa, and the coastlines of Antarctica, some of which should have been impossible to chart in the 16th century, especially considering that Antarctica was not discovered until much later. Yet, the map clearly shows the coastline of Antarctica, ice-free and with a level of detail that suggests knowledge far beyond what was available at the time. Could this map be evidence of ancient explorers who charted the world long before modern civilization? And could it be that they were charting a world that included Atlantis, a land that was once known to people from all corners of the earth, only to be lost to history? The more we explore the idea of Atlantis, the more we realize that its story is not just about a single city lost beneath the waves, but about an entire civilization whose influence may have shaped the course of human history in ways we can barely comprehend. Could it be that Atlantis was not merely a place, but a fountain of knowledge, wisdom so advanced, so profound, that has been deliberately hidden from us? Could the legends of Atlantis be a coded message, passed down through secret societies and hidden in the symbols and teachings of ancient cultures? The idea that Atlantis was more than just a myth is not a new one. Throughout history, various thinkers, from the ancient Egyptians to the Freemasons, have claimed that the knowledge of Atlantis was passed down through secret societies, its teachings hidden away to protect its power. The connection between Atlantis and the ancient Egyptians, for instance, is particularly striking. Some scholars believe that the Egyptian pyramids were built by survivors of Atlantis, using knowledge and technologies inherited from the lost civilization. There are also numerous references to Atlantis in the esoteric teachings of the Rosicrucians and other secret societies, suggesting that the lost wisdom of Atlantis was carefully preserved in hidden circles. If Atlantis was real, and if its influence has not disappeared, then what does that mean for us today? What if the knowledge of Atlantis is still out there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to unlock its secrets? The answer to that question might just lie beneath the waves, in the very ocean that has kept Atlantis buried for so long. But in order to find it, we must first ask ourselves, what if the echoes of Atlantis are not just the remnants of a lost civilization, but a force that is still shaping the world around us? The search for Atlantis, it seems, is not only about finding a sunken city, but about rediscovering a lost connection to the past, a past that might hold the key to the future. Plato's writings on Atlantis, particularly in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, have fascinated scholars, historians, and dreamers alike for centuries. In the opening pages of Timaeus, he introduces the story of Atlantis not as a myth or fantasy, but as a historical account handed down from ancient Egyptian priest to Solon, the Athenian lawgiver. Plato frames the tale as a story of ancient wisdom, a civilization lost in time, but whose influence lingers in the veins of humanity, carrying with it lessons about power, morality, and the inevitable decline of even the greatest empires. Yet, Despite the richness of Plato's description, the question that has always loomed over the story is, was Atlantis a real place, or merely a philosophical device designed to illustrate the consequences of hubris and moral corruption? According to Plato, Atlantis was a large island situated beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we know today as the Strait of Gibraltar. It was a place of extraordinary beauty and wealth, a utopian civilization that ruled over an empire spanning many lands. The capital city of Atlantis, which Plato describes in vivid detail, was a marvel of engineering. The city was laid out in concentric rings of land and water, surrounded by massive walls made of precious metals, with gates and temples that shone with the brilliance of an advanced civilization. The Atlanteans were described as prosperous and technologically advanced, with a society built on harmony and abundance. Yet, as Plato's tale unfolds, the moral decay of the Atlantean rulers becomes apparent. Their great wealth led them to grow arrogant and corrupt, and in time, their civilization fell out of favor with the gods. The gods, in response to their hubris, unleashed a catastrophic series of events: earthquakes, floods, and a terrible deluge that caused Atlantis to sink beneath the waves in a single, tragic day and night. According to Plato, the great city of Atlantis disappeared without a trace, its once vibrant streets and palaces now lost to the depths of the ocean. And thus, the fate of Atlantis became a cautionary tale, one that warned of the dangers of pride, excess, and the inevitable decline of even the most powerful civilizations. But the question remains, was this just a story, an allegory designed to teach moral lessons, or was Plato writing about a real event, a civilization that once existed but was erased from history? Over the centuries, many scholars have debated the true nature of Atlantis. Some argue that Plato's account was purely fictional, a philosophical tale meant to serve as a vehicle for his political ideas. In Timaeus, the discussion about Atlantis is framed within a broader conversation about the nature of the cosmos, the ideal state, and the responsibilities of rulers. For these scholars, Atlantis is a literary invention, a means of illustrating the dangers of moral corruption and the fall of great empires. Plato, they argue, used the story of Atlantis to create an idealized vision of a civilization, only to show how even the most perfect society could collapse under the weight of its own flaws. The fact that Plato introduces the story through a conversation with an Egyptian priest, who claims that the story has been passed down through generations, further reinforces the idea that Atlantis is a mythic construct rather than a historical reality. However, a different school of thought suggests that Plato's account was based on real events, and that the story of Atlantis is not a myth at all, but rather a historical record of a civilization lost to time. This theory is rooted in the belief that Plato was not simply using the tale as a moral allegory, but that he was preserving an ancient truth, a memory of a civilization that once existed and was destroyed in a cataclysmic event. Proponents of this viewpoint to Plato's detailed description of Atlantis, which includes specific references to geography, culture, and technology, as evidence that Atlantis was a real place. Plato, they argue, may have been passing on a story he received from his ancestors, one that was based on actual events, passed down through generations, and preserved in the oral traditions of ancient cultures. The geographical description of Atlantis in Plato's writings has been one of the most controversial aspects of the story. Plato mentions that Atlantis was larger than Libya and Asia combined, a vast island located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, or the Strait of Gibraltar. He describes the city of Atlantis as being built on concentric rings of land and water, with massive walls made of bronze, silver, and gold. The capital city had grand temples dedicated to Poseidon, the god of the sea, and was known for its advanced infrastructure, including intricate canals, waterways, and bridges. According to Plato, the people of Atlantis were both highly skilled engineers and experts in agriculture, creating a society that was both technologically advanced and harmonious with the natural world. Despite the specific details in Plato's writings, the exact location of Atlantis remains a subject of heated debate. The idea that Atlantis lay beyond the Pillars of Hercules has led many to focus their search on the Mediterranean, the Atlantic Ocean, and even the Caribbean. Some have suggested that the lost city might lie beneath the waters of the Mediterranean Sea, perhaps near the island of Santorini, which was devastated by a volcanic eruption around 1600 BC. Others have looked to the Caribbean, specifically the Bermuda Triangle, which has long been associated with mysterious disappearances and strange phenomena. Still, other researchers have posited that Atlantis could have been located near the Azores or even farther afield in the Atlantic Ocean. The search for Atlantis is far from over, with new theories and expeditions continuing to emerge, each one claiming to be on the verge of uncovering the long-lost civilization. Despite the wealth of speculation, no conclusive evidence has ever been found to prove the existence of Atlantis. Many scholars dismiss the idea that Atlantis was a real place, arguing that Plato's descriptions are simply allegorical and that the tale of the lost city was never intended to be taken literally. However, there are those who believe that Atlantis was a real civilization, one that was lost in a cataclysmic event, perhaps a massive flood, an earthquake, or a natural disaster that caused it to disappear beneath the waves. If Atlantis was real, then what happened to it? Was it destroyed by a natural catastrophe? Or was it deliberately hidden, its secrets buried by those who sought to suppress the knowledge it contained? Some researchers believe that the knowledge of Atlantis may have been passed down through ancient cultures, influencing the development of later civilizations. The Egyptians, for example, have long been linked to Atlantis due to the similarities between their culture and the descriptions of the Atlanteans in Plato's writings. The ancient Egyptians were known for their advanced knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering, and some scholars suggest that these skills may have been inherited from the survivors of Atlantis. The pyramids of Egypt, with their precision and mathematical complexity, are often cited as evidence of Atlantean influence. Could the Egyptians have learned their advanced techniques from a long-lost civilization, one that vanished beneath the sea? The connection between Atlantis and Egypt is further reinforced by the writings of later philosophers and scholars, such as the Greek philosopher Herodotus, who claimed that the Egyptians had a deep understanding of ancient knowledge, much of it passed down from the gods. The idea that the Egyptians were the heirs to the wisdom of Atlantis has been a key part of many theories surrounding the lost civilization. Some suggest that the Egyptian priests, in particular, preserved knowledge of Atlantis in their sacred texts, passing it down through secretive channels to those who were worthy of learning its secrets. This notion aligns with the belief that Atlantis was a repository of ancient wisdom, knowledge that, when lost, could have changed the course of history. Whether or not Atlantis was a literal civilization, the myth has endured for thousands of years, continuing to captivate our imaginations and fuel our search for the truth. The question remains, if Atlantis was real, what secrets did it hold, and how did its knowledge influence the course of human history? What if Plato's story was not just a cautionary tale, but a glimpse into the history of a civilization that once existed, whose legacy has shaped the world in ways we may never fully understand? The search for Atlantis continues, both in the physical world and in the realm of the imagination, as we strive to uncover the truth behind the myth and understand the profound impact it may have had on the development of our own civilization. The search for Atlantis has been one of the most enduring and tantalizing quests in the history of human exploration. Over the centuries, countless adventurers, historians, and researchers have embarked on a journey to uncover the truth behind the mysterious land Plato described. Some have approached the search with scientific rigor, hoping to find concrete evidence of a sunken civilization. Others have pursued more speculative paths, driven by the allure of ancient maps, strange anomalies, and cryptic clues embedded in the myths and traditions of various cultures. What becomes clear, however, is that the quest for Atlantis is not just the pursuit of a lost city. It is the search for something far deeper, an understanding of a forgotten past that might hold the key to unraveling mysteries of our present and future. Plato's account of Atlantis was the spark that ignited centuries of speculation and investigation. Yet, as with many great myths, the origins of the story and the location of the lost city have never been definitively established. The very first recorded search for Atlantis took place in the centuries following Plato's writings. Some ancient thinkers believed that the philosopher's tale was rooted in reality, while others dismissed it as pure fiction. In the ancient world, there was little understanding of the scope of the world's geography, and Atlantis was often imagined as a land beyond the known world, a mysterious island situated somewhere beyond the Mediterranean, beyond the limits of known geography. The early pursuit of Atlantis was primarily the work of explorers, mythographers, and geographers. In the Middle Ages, the story of Atlantis morphed into a quasi-historical tale, with various writers claiming that the lost city was somewhere in the distant past, perhaps buried beneath the waters of the Mediterranean or the Atlantic Ocean. The idea of an island paradise, full of advanced technology and culture, captured the imagination of the Western world. But it wasn't until the Renaissance that the search for Atlantis truly began to take off, spurred on by the rediscovery of classical texts and the dawn of modern exploration. During this time, intellectuals and scholars began to view the search for Atlantis in a more systematic way. The 16th and 17th centuries saw the publication of several key works that attempted to locate the fabled land. One of the earliest and most influential of these was the work of the Italian philosopher and geographer Athanasius Kircher, who in the 1600s published a detailed map that suggested Atlantis could be found in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Kircher's theories were based on a combination of Plato's writings and a range of ancient sources, and they marked one of the first efforts to locate Atlantis using geographical reasoning. The idea of Atlantis being located somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean began to take hold in the Western world, with many scholars and explorers believing that Plato's description of a land beyond the Pillars of Hercules pointed directly to this vast ocean. For centuries, the Atlantic was seen as the oceanic boundary of the known world, and its vastness inspired both fear and awe. The search for Atlantis in these waters became a romantic quest, one that entwined the imaginations of explorers with the belief that hidden treasures, lost civilizations, and ancient wisdom lay buried beneath the waves. One of the most significant events in the history of the Atlantis search occurred in the 19th century, when the idea of Atlantis began to evolve from an intellectual curiosity into a more speculative and popular pursuit. During this period, many thinkers began to propose alternative locations for the lost city. Some suggested that Atlantis was not an island at all, but rather a continent that had sunk beneath the ocean. Others, including the French philosopher and writer Pierre Borel, believed that Atlantis had been located somewhere in the Americas, perhaps in the Caribbean or even in the Gulf of Mexico. These ideas were further fueled by the discovery of ancient ruins and artifacts in the Americas, which some believed could be remnants of an Atlantean civilization. The search for Atlantis was further popularized by the work of the American author Ignatius Donnelly, whose book, Atlantis, The Antediluvian World, published in 1882, became one of the defining works of the modern Atlantis movement. Donnelly was one of the first to seriously propose that Atlantis was a real historical civilization, and his theories placed the lost city somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, likely near the Azores or the Canary Islands. Donnelly's book brought together a wide range of evidence, from ancient myths and archaeological finds to geological data, in support of his claim. He argued that the knowledge and achievements of Atlantis were passed down to other ancient civilizations, such as the Egyptians, Greeks, and Mesoamerican cultures, thus spreading its influence across the globe. Donnelly's ideas sparked a wave of interest in Atlantis and set the stage for the 20th century resurgence of the search. During this time, more and more theories began to emerge, each with its own interpretation of Plato's writings. Some theorists suggested that Atlantis could be found in the Mediterranean, in locations such as the Greek island of Santorini, the island of Cyprus, or the coast of Spain. These theories gained traction in part because of the discoveries made in the Mediterranean, particularly the excavation of ancient ruins that seemed to match Plato's descriptions of advanced architecture and technology. In the early 20th century, the possibility that Atlantis could be located in the Mediterranean seemed even more plausible due to the discovery of the Minoan civilization on the island of Crete. The Minoans, with their advanced culture and sophisticated technologies, were often seen as a precursor to the Atlanteans, and their sudden disappearance around 1450 BC was viewed as a possible parallel to the fate of Atlantis. Some scholars began to argue that the Minoans were the survivors of Atlantis, and that the eruption of the Thera volcano, which destroyed much of the Minoan civilization, could have been the event that caused Atlantis to sink beneath the sea. This theory continues to be popular among those who believe that the fabled land of Atlantis was located in the Mediterranean. The 20th century also saw the rise of alternative theories about Atlantis, particularly those that embraced more esoteric and speculative ideas. One of the most famous proponents of these theories was the American author and philosopher Edgar Cayce, who, in the early 1900s, began to claim that he had received psychic revelations about Atlantis through his readings. According to Cayce, Atlantis was not just an advanced civilization, but a spiritual center, one that had achieved great heights of knowledge and understanding. Cayce's readings also suggested that Atlantis was located in the Caribbean, specifically near the Bermuda Triangle, an area long associated with mysterious disappearances and strange phenomena. According to Cayce, the destruction of Atlantis was the result of a great spiritual crisis, one that occurred when the Atlanteans misused their advanced technology and lost touch with their spiritual roots. The destruction of Atlantis, in Cayce's view, was a cosmic warning about the dangers of technological arrogance and moral decay. Cayce's theories gave rise to the idea that Atlantis was not merely a lost civilization, but a civilization with a deep connection to spiritual and metaphysical forces. This shift in thinking opened up the search for Atlantis to a broader range of ideas, including the possibility that Atlantis was a place of mystical power and that its influence had been passed down through secret societies and esoteric traditions. This perspective transformed the search for Atlantis into something more than just a quest for a sunken city. It became a search for lost knowledge, hidden wisdom, and forgotten truths that might still have relevance in the modern world. Today, the search for Atlantis continues in various forms, from scientific expeditions to speculative theories and even the exploration of underwater anomalies. Theories about the location of Atlantis remain as diverse as ever. Some still believe that it lies somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, while others look to the Mediterranean or even the Caribbean. Yet, despite the myriad of theories and the decades of research, no conclusive evidence has emerged to prove the existence of Atlantis. The story of the lost city continues to captivate the human imagination, a mythic symbol of a forgotten world that may or may not have existed, but whose legacy, real or imagined, still exerts an influence on our perceptions of history, civilization, and the unknown. In the end, the search for Atlantis is more than just the pursuit of a geographical location. It is a quest to understand our own history, to grapple with the idea that humanity's past may be far older and more complex than we have been led to believe. Whether or not Atlantis was a real place, the enduring fascination with the myth speaks to our desire to uncover the lost chapters of our collective story, to understand the civilizations that came before us, and to glimpse the wisdom that may have been lost with them. As the search for Atlantis continues, it serves as a reminder that the past, like the ocean, holds secrets that may one day rise to the surface, waiting to be discovered once again. Throughout history, civilizations across the globe have shared remarkably similar myths and stories of sunken lands, great floods, and civilizations lost to time. From the ancient Egyptians to the Sumerians, the Greeks, the Mayans, and even indigenous cultures in the Pacific, the theme of a once great empire or city submerged beneath the waters seems to be an almost universal motif. The intriguing commonalities between these tales suggest that there may be a deeper, hidden truth that connects these cultures, something more than mere coincidence or cultural diffusion. Could the legends of Atlantis be based on a shared, historical event? Was there a singular, catastrophic event that created these myths, Or could the memory of a lost world have spread across different civilizations, all of whom witnessed or experienced some form of global catastrophe? The story of Atlantis, as described by Plato, is not unique in the ancient world. In fact, it mirrors many ancient flood myths and stories of vanished lands. The most obvious parallel is the biblical story of the flood, where the world is destroyed by water, and only Noah and his family survive to repopulate the earth. This idea of a divine or catastrophic flood that wipes out civilizations appears in nearly every ancient culture, with some versions being far older than the biblical account itself. In the ancient Sumerian text, the Epic of Gilgamesh, a great flood is sent by the gods to destroy humanity. The story closely parallels the tale of Noah's Ark, but it predates it by thousands of years. Similarly, the ancient Hindu scriptures speak of a great deluge known as the Pralaya, during which the earth was submerged underwater and only a few survivors were spared. In many ways, these stories seem to echo the downfall of Atlantis, suggesting that there could have been a real, global catastrophe that left its mark on the collective memory of humanity. These flood myths are often accompanied by stories of a great civilization or city that existed before the flood, only to be lost when the waters rose. In the case of Atlantis, Plato tells us that the once mighty empire was swallowed by the sea after a series of divine punishments. This theme of a great civilization falling victim to a flood appears again and again in ancient cultures. In the Mediterranean, the Greek myth of the lost city of Helike tells the story of a prosperous city that was submerged by a massive earthquake and tsunami. The city of Helike, like Atlantis, was said to be a wealthy and powerful metropolis, rich in culture and technology, only to be lost forever beneath the waves. Similar stories exist in the Middle East, such as the destruction of the Sumerian city of Dilmun, which was said to have been engulfed by a great flood. In the Americas, ancient cultures like the Mayans and the Aztecs also told stories of great cities or civilizations that were swallowed by water. The Mayans, for example, had a legend of the lost city of Xibalba, which was said to have been a place of incredible wealth and power. According to their myths, the city was lost when the gods flooded the world, wiping out everything in their path. The Aztecs, too, had similar stories of cities submerged by water, which they believed were part of a cyclical process of creation and destruction. These stories, while unique in their own right, share striking parallels with the tale of Atlantis, suggesting that they may have originated from a common source or experience, a global flood or some other catastrophic event that wiped out advanced civilizations. In addition to these flood myths, many ancient cultures also spoke of lands or cities that were lost or disappeared without a trace. The idea of a sunken land or lost civilization is particularly prevalent in the ancient Near East. The Sumerians, who lived in what is now modern-day Iraq, spoke of a great city called Eridu, which was said to be the first city created by the gods. According to Sumerian mythology, Eridu was eventually abandoned and forgotten, its ruins hidden beneath the sands of time. In Egyptian mythology, there is also a tale of a lost city called Yenu, or Heliopolis, which was said to be the center of the ancient world before it too disappeared. These cities, like Atlantis, were once thought to be the center of human civilization, but they were eventually lost, either to natural disasters or the passage of time. One of the most compelling similarities between the story of Atlantis and the myths of other cultures is the idea that these lost civilizations possessed advanced knowledge and technology that was either lost or hidden after their destruction. Plato's description of Atlantis paints the picture of a highly advanced society with sophisticated engineering, architecture, and agricultural practices. The Atlanteans are said to have been masters of technology, with an intricate network of canals and bridges, and their capital city was a marvel of engineering, featuring grand temples, monumental palaces, and vast artificial harbors. The city itself was said to have been built in concentric rings of land and water, a feat of engineering that was unheard of in ancient times. This advanced technology is echoed in many other ancient civilizations. The Egyptians, for instance, are often said to have had knowledge of the stars and mathematics that far exceeded what was known at the time. Their construction of the pyramids, with their precise alignment to the stars and their mathematical intricacies, continues to baffle modern scholars. Similarly, the ancient Sumerians, who are credited with creating the first known civilization, left behind impressive architectural feats, such as the ziggurats, which were massive step pyramids built for religious purposes. The Sumerians also had a highly sophisticated system of writing, which allowed them to record their history and knowledge for future generations. Like the Atlanteans, the Sumerians seem to have possessed knowledge and technologies that were far ahead of their time. The connection between these advanced civilizations and the lost knowledge of Atlantis has led some researchers to suggest that Atlantis itself may have been the source of this ancient wisdom. The idea that the Atlanteans were the progenitors of advanced knowledge, which was passed down to other cultures after their downfall, is a theory that has gained traction among certain groups of scholars and mystics. According to this view, Atlantis was not just a lost city, but a cradle of civilization, where humanity's greatest achievements were first realized. After the destruction of Atlantis, this knowledge was scattered across the globe, where it influenced the development of other cultures, such as the Egyptians, the Greeks, and the Sumerians. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence for this theory is the idea of cultural diffusion. Cultural diffusion is the process by which ideas, technologies, and practices spread from one society to another. Many scholars believe that the advanced knowledge of the Atlanteans was passed down through the ages, either directly or indirectly, influencing the development of other civilizations. This idea is supported by the striking similarities between the myths, technologies, and cultural practices of ancient societies, many of which seem to echo the accomplishments of Atlantis. In addition to these cultural similarities, there are also physical and geological evidence that could point to a shared historical event. The Mediterranean, in particular, is home to many submerged cities and underwater ruins that suggest the possibility of a widespread catastrophe. The ruins of ancient cities like Helike, which was swallowed by an earthquake and tsunami in the 4th century BC, provide physical evidence of the kind of disaster that might have befallen Atlantis. Similarly, the discovery of ancient submerged structures off the coast of Yonaguni in Japan has sparked intense debate about whether they are the remnants of a lost civilization, possibly one connected to Atlantis. These submerged cities and ruins suggest that the memory of Atlantis could be rooted in real historical events, and that the flood myths of ancient cultures might be based on a common, traumatic experience that left its mark on humanity's collective consciousness. The idea that Atlantis was a real civilization, with its advanced knowledge and technology passed down through the ages, is further supported by the existence of secret societies and esoteric traditions that claim to preserve the lost wisdom of Atlantis. Throughout history, various groups, such as the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, have been associated with the study and preservation of ancient knowledge. These secret societies often claim to hold the keys to hidden knowledge, much of which is said to be derived from the lost teachings of Atlantis. Whether through symbolism, rituals, or hidden manuscripts, these societies believe they are the guardians of a wisdom that was passed down from the survivors of Atlantis, who preserved their knowledge after the fall of their civilization. In the end, the stories of sunken lands and lost civilizations, whether it's Atlantis, Lemuria, or any other of the countless tales from around the world, point to something far deeper than just a desire to explain natural disasters. These myths, legends, and traditions seem to carry within them a warning, a reminder that even the greatest civilizations can fall, that power can be fleeting, and that knowledge, once lost, can never truly be recovered. They urge us to look not only to the past, but to the present, to ask ourselves what we have learned from the mistakes of those who came before us, and whether we are doomed to repeat the same cycles of rise and fall that have characterized human history for millennia. The idea that Atlantis was not simply a lost civilization, but rather a repository of profound knowledge. Knowledge so advanced that it could have influenced the development of ancient societies, has captivated scholars, philosophers, and mystics for centuries. If we are to entertain the possibility that Atlantis was real and that its knowledge was passed down through the ages, we must consider how this ancient wisdom could have shaped the civilizations that followed. In many ways, the idea of Atlantis as a fountain of knowledge fits neatly into a broader narrative of human history, one in which advanced civilizations have often left behind clues, artifacts, and ideas that continue to influence our understanding of the world today. Plato's account of Atlantis describes a civilization with remarkable technological achievements, an understanding of engineering, agriculture, and governance that seemed to surpass anything that had been recorded up until that point. The Atlanteans, according to Plato, had harnessed the power of the natural world in ways that were nothing short of miraculous. Their city was built with concentric rings of land and water, surrounded by massive walls made of bronze, silver, and gold. They had a vast, intricate network of canals and waterways that facilitated trade and transport, as well as a system of governance that was both sophisticated and just. The Atlanteans were also said to possess an understanding of astronomy and mathematics, using these disciplines to design their architecture and to align their cities with the stars. It is this advanced knowledge, which Plato described as having been passed down to the Greeks through Egypt, that forms the basis of the theory that Atlantis was not just a powerful civilization, but the source of much of the knowledge that would later be disseminated to other cultures. This theory of cultural diffusion, the idea that knowledge and technology were passed from one civilization to another, is not a new one. In fact, it is central to many interpretations of ancient history. Scholars have long pointed out the striking similarities between the mythologies, technologies, and philosophies of ancient cultures, which seem to suggest that these societies were connected in ways that go beyond simple trade and conquest. The Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Greeks, and the Mesoamerican cultures all share certain motifs and symbols that seem to point toward a common origin. Whether it is the pyramids of Egypt, the ziggurats of Sumer, or the step pyramids of the Mayans and Aztecs, these monumental structures suggest an advanced understanding of engineering and mathematics, knowledge that could have been inherited from a much older and more sophisticated civilization, possibly one like Atlantis. The idea that Atlantis was the source of this knowledge is supported by the fact that many ancient cultures believe their wisdom came from a more ancient civilization. The Egyptians, for example, held the belief that their knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and architecture was given to them by the gods, but they also spoke of an earlier age, one in which the gods themselves walked among humans. This mythical age was often referred to as the Golden Age, a time when the earth was in harmony and knowledge was more easily attained. Similarly, the ancient Greeks, especially philosophers like Plato, were deeply influenced by the wisdom of Egypt, which they regarded as the birthplace of civilization and knowledge. Plato's dialogues often reference Egyptian priests, who are depicted as having preserved ancient knowledge passed down from an earlier prehistoric era. According to Plato, the Egyptians possessed records of a great civilization that existed long before even their own, which aligns with the idea that the knowledge of Atlantis may have been preserved by the Egyptians and passed down through the generations. Moreover, the Atlanteans themselves, according to Plato, were said to have had a divine origin, tracing their ancestry to the Greek god Poseidon. The story of Atlantis, as described by Plato, is replete with gods and divine intervention, with the Atlanteans viewed as semi-divine beings who were both gifted and cursed by the gods. This connection between the Atlanteans and the gods may have been one of the reasons why the civilization's knowledge was considered so profound, because it was believed to be of divine origin. Such a belief would have placed the knowledge of Atlantis on a different plane, something to be revered and protected. This divine connection also mirrors the beliefs of many ancient cultures that their knowledge had a sacred or supernatural quality. The Egyptians, for example, viewed their pyramids as more than just architectural feats. They believed the pyramids were cosmic structures that aligned the earth with the stars, serving as gateways for the souls of the dead to ascend to the heavens. If Atlantis was the origin of such knowledge, then it is easy to see how this wisdom would have been seen as something divine worthy of preservation and dissemination to other cultures. The idea that Atlantis passed on its knowledge to Egypt and, by extension, to other ancient civilizations is supported by the fact that many ancient texts and artifacts contain symbols and patterns that appear across cultures. These shared motifs can be seen in the art, architecture, and religious practices of cultures that were separated by vast distances and time. For example, the ancient Egyptians and the Greeks both revered the concept of sacred geometry, a system of mathematical principles used to design their temples, pyramids, and other structures. The use of sacred geometry can also be found in the architecture of ancient Mesoamerican cultures, such as the Mayans and the Aztecs, who constructed their pyramids with precise mathematical ratios that mirrored the design principles used by the Egyptians and Greeks. This suggests a common source of knowledge, one that could have been passed down from Atlantis. In addition to these physical and architectural similarities, the ancient texts of various cultures also contain references to similar philosophical and spiritual ideas. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, for example, contains teachings on the afterlife, the nature of the soul, and the cosmos, ideas that are strikingly similar to those found in the ancient Greek philosophies of Plato and Pythagoras. These similarities are not limited to the Egyptians and Greeks. Similar teachings can be found in the spiritual traditions of the Far East, as well as in the religious texts of ancient Mesopotamia and the Americas. The concept of a divine, cosmic order, the belief in the soul's immortality, and the understanding of the universe as an interconnected whole. All of these ideas can be traced back to Atlantis, according to the theory that the civilization's knowledge was passed down to later cultures. But if Atlantis was indeed the source of this profound knowledge, what happened to it? Why did this great civilization, which possessed such advanced wisdom, disappear from history? According to Plato, the fall of Atlantis was not simply the result of a natural disaster, but rather the consequence of the moral decline of the Atlanteans themselves. As the civilization grew more powerful and wealthy, the Atlanteans became corrupt, abandoning the virtues that had originally made them great. Their greed and arrogance led to their downfall, and the gods decided to punish them by sinking the island beneath the sea. This narrative of divine retribution, of a once great civilization brought low by its own hubris, is a powerful and universal theme, one that recurs throughout history and myth. It serves as a warning, a reminder that even the most advanced and prosperous civilizations can fall if they lose their moral compass. Yet, while Atlantis may have been lost to the sea, its knowledge did not vanish entirely. If we accept the idea that the knowledge of Atlantis was passed down through Egypt and other ancient cultures, then we must ask ourselves, how much of this knowledge has been preserved? How much of it remains hidden, concealed in the symbols, texts, and artifacts of ancient civilizations? Throughout history, secret societies, mystics, and esoteric traditions have claimed to possess the hidden wisdom of Atlantis. The Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, and other such groups have all been associated with the preservation and dissemination of ancient knowledge, much of it believed to be derived from Atlantis itself. These secret societies, with their elaborate rituals and symbols, have often been accused of guarding knowledge that has been deliberately kept from the masses. Could it be that the wisdom of Atlantis is still out there, concealed in the arcane teachings of these societies, waiting to be rediscovered? The idea of a secret, hidden knowledge, one that has been carefully preserved and passed down through generations, is a central theme in many conspiracy theories. Some believe that the true legacy of Atlantis is not just in the physical artifacts left behind by the civilization, but in the spiritual and metaphysical knowledge that has been passed down in secret. This knowledge, if it were ever to be fully revealed, could potentially change the way we understand the world, our place in it, and the nature of the universe itself. If Atlantis was indeed a civilization that possessed advanced spiritual and scientific knowledge, then it stands to reason that some of that knowledge could have survived in a concealed form, waiting for the right moment to emerge. As we reflect on the idea of Atlantis, it becomes clear that the search for the lost civilization is not just about uncovering a sunken city. It is about rediscovering a lost connection to the past, one that may hold the key to unlocking the mysteries of human history, science, and spirituality. Whether or not Atlantis existed in the way Plato described, its legacy, its knowledge, could still be shaping the world today. And perhaps, in the depths of the ocean, or buried in the ancient texts and symbols of long-forgotten civilizations, the echoes of Atlantis are waiting to be discovered once again, offering us the wisdom of a civilization that once understood the interconnectedness of all things. The enigmatic disappearance of Atlantis has sparked intense debates and investigations for centuries, each attempt to uncover its fate fueling the larger mystery of why great civilizations fall and what factors contribute to their collapse. The fall of Atlantis, according to Plato's account, was precipitated by a series of catastrophic events, earthquakes, floods, and other natural disasters that overwhelmed the island and led to its final submergence beneath the ocean. Plato's narrative suggests that the Atlanteans, in their pride and moral corruption, had incurred the wrath of the gods, who punished them with an apocalyptic deluge. However, if we are to believe that Atlantis was a real place, then the question remains, what kind of natural disasters could have triggered such a violent and total collapse of a once great civilization? Was it a result of an isolated cataclysmic event, or were the forces that brought down Atlantis part of a broader cycle of global upheaval that affected multiple civilizations across the world? Many theories have been proposed over the years to explain the demise of Atlantis, each one attempting to provide a scientific, geological, or archaeological basis for the tale. The most common explanation for Atlantis' fall is the idea that it was destroyed by a massive natural disaster, such as a volcanic eruption, an earthquake, or a tsunami. This explanation, while plausible, raises a host of questions. Could an island the size of Atlantis, with its monumental architecture and advanced technologies, have been so completely destroyed by a single event? Could such a catastrophe have been recorded in the myths and legends of other ancient cultures, pointing to the possibility of a global disaster? One of the most compelling theories regarding the fall of Atlantis is linked to the eruption of the Thera volcano, which occurred around 1600 BCE on the island of Santorini in the Aegean Sea. This eruption, one of the most powerful in recorded history, caused widespread destruction throughout the Mediterranean and left a massive caldera in its wake. The eruption of Thera is believed to have led to the collapse of the Minoan civilization, which was one of the most advanced cultures of the time. The Minoans, who inhabited the island of Crete, were known for their sophisticated palaces, art, and culture. The eruption and subsequent tsunamis devastated their cities, leading to a rapid decline in Minoan power. Some researchers have suggested that the story of Atlantis could be a reflection of the catastrophic impact of the Thera eruption, with the island of Atlantis symbolizing a once great civilization that was destroyed by a natural disaster. The similarities between Plato's account of Atlantis and the destruction of the Minoan civilization are striking. Both Atlantis and Minoan Crete were said to be rich in culture and technology, with grand palaces, advanced infrastructure, and a strong naval presence. Both civilizations were connected to the sea, and both were destroyed by a combination of volcanic eruption, earthquakes, and floods. In this light, Atlantis could be a mythic retelling of the fall of the Minoans, with Plato's tale serving as a way to preserve the memory of this ancient catastrophe. However, while the Thera eruption offers a plausible explanation for the destruction of Atlantis, it is not the only natural disaster theory that has been put forward. Another theory focuses on the possibility of a massive earthquake, one capable of causing widespread devastation in the Mediterranean region. Earthquakes of such magnitude have occurred throughout history, and the Mediterranean is situated along a tectonic plate boundary, making it particularly prone to seismic activity. A large-scale earthquake could have caused the island of Atlantis to sink into the ocean, triggering a series of devastating waves that would have completely wiped out the civilization. In this scenario, the story of Atlantis could be based on the memory of an ancient earthquake that led to the submergence of a once thriving island. Similarly, the idea of a massive tsunami wiping out Atlantis is also a popular explanation. Tsunamis are often caused by undersea earthquakes or volcanic eruptions, and they can travel vast distances, causing destruction far beyond the immediate epicenter of the event. The possibility of a tsunami hitting Atlantis is supported by the fact that many ancient cultures have stories of great floods or tidal waves that overwhelmed entire civilizations. Plato's description of Atlantis sinking into the sea over the course of a single day and night could be interpreted as a vivid recollection of the destruction caused by a massive tsunami. Given the island's advanced infrastructure and the fact that it was said to be surrounded by water, a large tsunami could have caused widespread flooding, leading to the eventual submergence of the entire landmass. In addition to these geological explanations, some theories suggest that Atlantis' fall could have been caused by environmental changes, such as shifts in sea levels, changes in climate, or even the gradual encroachment of the ocean. The concept of rising sea levels due to global warming or melting ice caps is a relatively modern phenomenon, but in ancient times, it is possible that a similar process could have affected the Mediterranean and Atlantic regions. If the sea levels gradually rose over time, Atlantis could have found itself slowly inundated by water, eventually leading to its collapse. This idea is consistent with Plato's description of Atlantis as being a fertile and prosperous island with a strong connection to the natural world. It is conceivable that such a society, heavily reliant on agriculture and trade, could have been severely impacted by rising seas or changes in climate. The theory of environmental collapse is particularly compelling because it suggests that Atlantis' fall was not a sudden or isolated event, but rather part of a broader pattern of ecological instability that affected multiple civilizations. The idea that environmental factors, such as climate change or rising sea levels, could have contributed to the collapse of Atlantis resonates with other ancient stories of civilizations falling due to natural forces. In the case of the Maya civilization, for example, researchers have pointed to prolonged droughts as a key factor in the decline of their once great cities in Central America. Similarly, the decline of the ancient Egyptian civilization has been attributed in part to environmental changes, including shifts in the course of the Nile River. If we look at Atlantis through this lens, we may see it not as the victim of a singular apocalyptic event, but as a civilization that, like many others, was vulnerable to the forces of nature. Another interesting theory about the fall of Atlantis involves the possibility of internal collapse. According to Plato's account, the Atlanteans were a people who became morally corrupt over time, growing arrogant and decadent as their power and wealth increased. This moral decline led to the downfall of their society, as the gods, angered by their behavior, punished them by sinking their island beneath the waves. The idea that a civilization can collapse from within due to internal corruption or mismanagement is a familiar theme in the history of human societies. Throughout history, many great empires have fallen because of corruption, infighting, or the inability to adapt to changing circumstances. In the case of Atlantis, this theory suggests that the once great civilization may have been destroyed not by an external force, such as an earthquake or flood, but by its own internal weaknesses. The moral corruption of the Atlanteans, as Plato describes it, could have led to social unrest, political instability, or economic collapse, weakening the society to the point where it was no longer able to withstand external pressures, whether for natural disasters or other civilizations. In this scenario, the gods' punishment of Atlantis will be a metaphor for the inevitable downfall of a civilization that loses its ethical grounding and becomes consumed by greed, corruption, and excess. While many of these theories attempt to explain the natural and societal causes of Atlantis' fall, there is also the possibility that the story of Atlantis is a symbolic narrative, a myth that has been passed down through the ages to serve as a cautionary tale. Plato's account of Atlantis may not have been meant to be taken literally, but rather as an allegory for the rise and fall of civilizations throughout history. The idea that Atlantis was destroyed because of its moral decay could be seen as a warning to future generations about the dangers of hubris, the abuse of power, and the corruption of society's leaders. In this sense, the fall of Atlantis may not be a reflection of a real, historical event, but rather a mythic representation of the inevitable decline of all great civilizations, whether they are real or imagined. No matter how we interpret the fall of Atlantis, what remains undeniable is the enduring fascination with the story and the questions it raises about the fragility of human civilization. The idea that a highly advanced society could rise to great heights only to be brought low by natural forces or moral failings is a theme that continues to resonate with modern audiences. It serves as a reminder that even the most powerful and prosperous civilizations are vulnerable to the whims of nature and the consequences of their own actions. And it compels us to consider what lessons we can learn from the past so that we might avoid repeating the same mistakes that led to the fall of Atlantis and other lost civilizations. Ultimately, the mystery of Atlantis remains unsolved, but its story continues to inspire us. Whether we view it as a historical reality, a mythic allegory, or a symbol of humanity's ongoing struggle with its own nature, the legend of Atlantis reminds us that our greatest achievements are always at risk of being lost to time. The story of Atlantis is, at its core, a story of ambition, pride, and downfall, a universal tale that transcends cultures and speaks to the deepest fears and hopes of the human spirit. In the end, the fall of Atlantis is not just a question of what happened to a lost civilization, but a reflection on the fragility of all civilizations, including our own. As the myth of Atlantis continues to captivate our collective imagination, the question arises, what if the story of Atlantis wasn't just a tale of a long-lost civilization, but rather a reflection of a much deeper, universal truth about the cycles of human history? Could it be that the legend of Atlantis, along with the many similar stories of vanished lands and empires across the world, is not merely a relic of ancient folklore, but an archetype of human experience, one that echoes through time, reminding us of the impermanence of all things? The allure of Atlantis lies not just in the possibility that it was a real place, lost to the ravages of time, but in the idea that it was a civilization that possessed something more than advanced technology and power. According to Plato, the Atlanteans had reached the pinnacle of cultural, political, and spiritual achievement. They were said to have had an understanding of the natural world and the cosmos that was unparalleled, with their great city built upon principles of harmony and balance. But Plato's account also reveals a darker side to the story, one in which the Atlanteans, as they grew more powerful, became corrupted by their own wealth and hubris. In their pursuit of dominance, they strayed from the virtues that once made them great, and in doing so, they incurred the wrath of the gods. This fatal flaw, the corruption of once pure ideals, is a theme that resonates not just within the Atlantis myth, but throughout the histories of many civilizations, making the story of Atlantis a mirror to our own world. The idea that civilizations rise to greatness only to fall from grace is, unfortunately, a recurring motif in human history. From the great empires of Rome, Persia, and Egypt to the kingdoms of the Aztecs, Maya, and Inca, the pattern of growth, prosperity, and eventual collapse is one that has been repeated time and time again. These civilizations, like Atlantis, achieved remarkable feats, engineering wonders, architectural masterpieces, and advancements in science, art, and philosophy. But many of them were ultimately undone by their own internal weaknesses, moral decay, or inability to adapt to external challenges. The fall of these civilizations, much like the fall of Atlantis, was not a singular event, but rather a slow unraveling, often spanning generations or even centuries, as the seeds of their destruction were sown long before the final downfall. One of the most powerful elements of the Atlantis myth is the sense that the civilization's decline was not caused solely by external forces like war or conquest, but by the internal moral corruption of its people. According to Plato, the Atlanteans, once virtuous and just, became consumed by greed, lust for power, and a desire to dominate others. As they expanded their empire, they began to lose touch with the higher principles that had initially guided their civilization. their society became increasingly materialistic and self-serving, and their leaders, once wise and fair, became tyrants. This moral decay, Plato suggests, is what ultimately led to their downfall. It was not the destruction of Atlantis by natural disasters alone that caused its fall, but the inner collapse of its society, which made it vulnerable to external forces. This theme of internal decay is echoed in many other stories of lost civilizations. The ancient Sumerians, for example, believed that their gods had abandoned them when they failed to live up to the moral and spiritual standards that were expected of them. In their epic tales, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh, the gods punish humanity for its failings, often sending floods or other cataclysms as a form of divine retribution. Similarly, the ancient Greeks, through the writings of philosophers like Plato, expressed the idea that civilizations could fall not because of external invasions, but because they lost their moral compass and allowed corruption to take root. In this sense, the collapse of Atlantis serves as a cautionary tale, warning future generations about the dangers of losing sight of the virtues that uphold a just and harmonious society. This notion of moral and spiritual decline resonates deeply in the context of modern society. In many ways, the world today mirrors the story of Atlantis. We live in an age of unprecedented technological advancement, global connectivity, and material wealth. Yet, despite these accomplishments, we face a host of challenges: environmental degradation, political instability, social inequality, and a pervasive sense of moral and spiritual disillusionment. Many have argued that the world, much like Atlantis, is at a crossroads, where the choices we make today will determine whether we continue on a path of growth and prosperity or spiral toward decline and destruction. The idea that the moral decay of a civilization can lead to its downfall is one that has been explored by numerous thinkers throughout history. In the modern era, scholars, sociologists, and philosophers have pointed to various factors that contribute to the decline of societies, including the erosion of ethical standards, the concentration of power in the hands of a few, and the prioritization of material gain over spiritual and communal well-being. In many ways, the fall of Atlantis is a metaphor for the struggles that we face today. Our pursuit of power and wealth, our disregard for the environment, and our tendency to prioritize short-term gain over long-term sustainability. One of the key lessons from the Atlantis myth is the importance of balance. The Atlanteans, in their pursuit of dominance, overextended themselves, conquering new lands and expanding their empire without regard for the consequences. In doing so, they disrupted the natural balance of their world, leading to their eventual destruction. This idea of balance between nature and civilization, between wealth and wisdom, between power and humility, has been a central theme in many ancient traditions, and it is one that remains highly relevant today. If we are to avoid the fate of Atlantis, we must learn to strike a balance between progress and preservation, between our desires for material success and our responsibility to future generations. The fall of Atlantis, as described by Plato, also raises important questions about the nature of power and its corrupting influence. In the myth, the Atlanteans began as a noble people, living in harmony with the gods and the natural world. However, as their power grew, they became increasingly arrogant and tyrannical, believing themselves to be invincible. This belief in their own superiority led them to make reckless decisions, eventually bringing about their ruin. This theme of the corrupting influence of power is not limited to the myth of Atlantis. It is a central motif in the history of many great empires. The Roman Empire, for example, was once a republic built on ideals of justice and equality. But as its power grew, it became increasingly corrupt, with emperors who ruled as absolute despots, leading to internal strife and eventual collapse. In the modern world, we see similar patterns of power concentration, where a small group of elites wield disproportionate influence over political, economic, and social systems. This concentration of power often leads to the erosion of democratic principles, the marginalization of the common people, and the rise of authoritarianism. The story of Atlantis serves as a reminder that power, when unchecked and abused, can lead to the downfall of even the most advanced civilizations. If we are to avoid the fate of Atlantis, we must ensure that power is distributed fairly and that those in positions of authority remain accountable to the people they serve. The Atlantis myth also invites us to consider the nature of knowledge and wisdom. In Plato's account, the Atlanteans were a highly advanced civilization, possessing knowledge of the natural world, mathematics, and the cosmos. Yet, despite their intellectual achievements, they ultimately succumbed to their own moral shortcomings. This paradox, the juxtaposition of great intellectual achievement with moral failure, raises important questions about the relationship between knowledge and wisdom. In the modern world, we have access to more information than ever before, with vast amounts of knowledge available at our fingertips. However, the sheer volume of information does not necessarily translate into wisdom. In fact, the rapid expansion of knowledge in the digital age has created new challenges, such as misinformation, the erosion of critical thinking, and the rise of echo chambers. Like the Atlanteans, we may find ourselves at a crossroads, where our intellectual achievements are overshadowed by our inability to use that knowledge in a responsible and ethical manner. The story of Atlantis, then, serves as both a warning and a guide for the future. It reminds us that no civilization, no matter how advanced, is immune to collapse. It warns us of the dangers of hubris and the corrupting influence of power. It challenges us to reflect on our moral values and to consider how we use the knowledge and resources at our disposal. If we are to avoid the fate of Atlantis, we must learn from its mistakes, striving for balance, wisdom, and humility in all aspects of our lives. The echoes of Atlantis may still resonate through time, urging us to heed the lessons of the past before it is too late. The search for Atlantis has long been driven by the belief that it holds the key to unraveling some of humanity's greatest mysteries. It is not just a story of a lost civilization, but also a symbol of our longing for a deeper understanding of our past, of a time when humanity might have possessed wisdom and knowledge far beyond what we know today. But why does the idea of Atlantis continue to captivate us, even centuries after Plato's original account? The answer lies not just in the allure of a sunken city or the possibility of ancient technology, but in the deeper questions that the Atlantis myth raises. Questions about human potential, the nature of civilization, and the forgotten wisdom that may have once existed on Earth. For centuries, Atlantis has served as a canvas upon which many have projected their hopes, fears, and ideals. It represents, in many ways, the ideal civilization, one that possesses great power, wisdom, and harmony with nature. Plato's description of Atlantis paints a picture of a society that was a model of scientific achievement, spiritual depth, and cultural richness. The Atlanteans were not only technologically advanced, but they had also achieved a level of moral and spiritual harmony that many civilizations throughout history have aspired to. Yet, this very idealism is what makes the fall of Atlantis so poignant and tragic. It serves as a reminder that even the greatest civilizations can fall, not necessarily because of external forces, but because of internal flaws such as greed, arrogance, and moral decay. The question of why we are still drawn to the idea of Atlantis may also be tied to our collective sense of loss. In many ways, the myth of Atlantis speaks to something that we are all searching for, a lost connection to an earlier, more enlightened time. Whether it is through our fascination with the ancient pyramids of Egypt, the mysterious stone structures of the Andes, or the tales of forgotten lands like Lemuria or Mu, humanity seems to be endlessly preoccupied with the idea of a time before recorded history, a time when ancient knowledge was preserved, when humanity lived in harmony with nature, and when the mysteries of the universe were understood in ways that modern science cannot yet comprehend. This yearning for a forgotten golden age is not limited to the myth of Atlantis alone. It is a theme that runs through many cultures and religions. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, for example, the Garden of Eden represents a lost paradise, a place of innocence and perfection from which humanity was cast out. In the Hindu tradition, the concept of Kali Yuga, the current age of darkness and decay, suggests that humanity once lived in a golden age of spiritual purity and wisdom, but has since fallen into a state of ignorance and corruption. The Greeks, too, spoke of an earlier age, the Golden Age, when gods and humans lived together in harmony and peace. This shared idea of a lost golden age seems to be an inherent part of the human experience, an expression of our deep-seated desire to return to a time when things were simpler, purer, and more in tune with the natural world. In the case of Atlantis, the story of its fall carries a heavy, symbolic weight. It is not simply a tale of a civilization wiped out by natural disasters or divine punishment. The fall of Atlantis is a metaphor for the cyclical nature of history, where civilizations rise to great heights only to be undone by their own internal flaws. The idea that Atlantis was punished for its moral corruption serves as a warning about the dangers of pride, excess, and the unchecked pursuit of power. As much as we may long for a time of enlightenment and wisdom, the Atlantis myth reminds us that such civilizations can also be fragile and easily destroyed when they lose sight of the values that made them great in the first place. Yet, the persistence of the Atlantis myth also reflects a more optimistic belief that the knowledge of this lost civilization might one day be rediscovered, or perhaps that it never truly disappeared but has been hidden from us, waiting for the right moment to reemerge. For those who subscribe to this idea, Atlantis represents not just a lost civilization, but a hidden treasure trove of wisdom, technology, and spiritual teachings that could offer humanity the answers it so desperately seeks. In this view, the story of Atlantis becomes less about what was lost and more about what might be rediscovered. Whether through archaeological exploration, esoteric traditions, or scientific breakthroughs, the belief that the secrets of Atlantis could one day be uncovered fuels an enduring fascination with the idea of lost wisdom. Many have pointed to the hidden symbols and codes embedded in the ancient structures and traditions of civilizations around the world as evidence that the knowledge of Atlantis may have been passed down through secret societies and esoteric traditions. These societies, such as the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, and others, have long been associated with the preservation and transmission of hidden knowledge, and some claim that they are the inheritors of the wisdom of Atlantis. The use of symbols, sacred geometry, and secret rituals is often seen as a way of preserving ancient wisdom, passed down from the lost civilization to those who are worthy of it. Some believe that this hidden knowledge, if revealed, could help humanity unlock new potentials for technological advancement, spiritual enlightenment, and even a deeper understanding of the universe itself. The idea that the knowledge of Atlantis has been concealed, hidden away by those who understand its power and significance, is an appealing one. It taps into our desire for a secret truth, something hidden from the masses but accessible to those who are initiated into the mysteries. This belief in hidden knowledge is not limited to Atlantis. It can be found in many religious, spiritual, and philosophical traditions. From the Kabbalah to the Hermetic teachings, from the secret societies of the Renaissance to the mystical traditions of the East, there's a long history of esoteric knowledge being kept from the general public, either for fear of its misuse or because it is believed that only a select few are capable of understanding and applying it. For many modern-day seekers, the story of Atlantis is more than just a tale of a lost city or a drowned empire. It is a metaphor for the inner journey of self-discovery. Just as Atlantis was said to possess a wisdom that transcended the material world, so too do many believe that the true treasures of humanity lie not in external accomplishments, but in the exploration of our own consciousness and potential. In this sense, Atlantis becomes a symbol not just of a lost civilization, but of the higher potential that lies dormant within us all, waiting to be rediscovered, just as the knowledge of Atlantis might one day be revealed to the world once again. But even if the secrets of Atlantis remain elusive, the myth continues to inspire us to search for something greater, something that transcends the mundane aspects of daily life. The allure of Atlantis speaks to our longing for meaning, for understanding, and for the possibility that there is more to the world than meets the eye. Whether we believe in its literal existence or view it as a metaphor for human potential, the story of Atlantis is a reminder that we are capable of great achievements, but we must always be mindful of the dangers of hubris, of losing sight of what is truly important. The ongoing fascination with Atlantis is also a reflection of our deep connection to the natural world. In Plato's account, Atlantis was said to be a civilization that lived in harmony with nature, with the land and sea providing for their every need. The city was described as a marvel of natural beauty, with lush gardens, flowing rivers, and fertile soil. The Atlanteans were able to harness the power of the earth and the oceans in ways that modern civilizations can only dream of. But as their power grew, so too did their disconnect from the natural world. The more they expanded their empire, the more they began to exploit the land and sea. And in doing so, they triggered the cataclysmic events that led to their downfall. This relationship between humanity and nature is perhaps the most relevant lesson we can learn from the story of Atlantis. Today, as we face environmental crises such as climate change, deforestation, and loss of biodiversity, we are reminded of the dangers of exploiting the Earth's resources without regard for the long-term consequences. Atlantis, in this sense, is a cautionary tale about the risks of overreach, of losing sight of the delicate balance that sustains life on Earth. The fall of Atlantis serves as a warning that when we separate ourselves from the natural world, when we become disconnected from the rhythms and cycles of nature, we risk our own downfall. Whether we view Atlantis as a real historical place, a symbolic representation of the rise and fall of civilizations, or a metaphor for the potential that lies within each of us, the story continues to captivate our imagination and shape our understanding of the human experience. The lost wisdom of Atlantis may remain just that, a myth, an enigma, a mystery that we may never fully solve. But in our search for answers, we find something far more profound: the recognition that the journey itself is just as important as the destination. In seeking the lost city of Atlantis, we uncover not just the secrets of a distant past, but the hidden potential of our own future. The idea that the fall of Atlantis was not simply the result of natural disasters or divine punishment, but rather a consequence of the deterioration of its society's core principles, introduces a much deeper layer to the story. At its heart, the Atlantis myth is not just about the destruction of a civilization, but about the inherent dangers of moral and ethical decline. The idea that a society, in its pursuit of power and wealth, can lose touch with the very values that made it great, is a theme that transcends the ancient world and speaks to the core of the challenges faced by every civilization throughout history. If we accept this interpretation, Atlantis becomes a powerful symbol of what happens when a civilization's sense of justice, balance, and humility erodes over time, leaving it vulnerable to internal collapse and, ultimately, to self-destruction. The Atlanteans, according to Plato, were originally a noble people, wise and just, who lived in harmony with the gods and the natural world. They were described as a people who had mastered the forces of nature, building an advanced civilization centered around technology, knowledge, and balance. But as their power grew, so too did their pride and their sense of superiority. What began as a harmonious society, dedicated to wisdom and understanding, gradually devolved into a civilization obsessed with conquest, material gain, and domination. This moral and spiritual decay, Plato suggests, led to the eventual downfall of the island. The gods, seeing the corruption that had taken root among the Atlanteans, decided to punish them, not by simply destroying their civilization, but by sinking the island beneath the waves, erasing their legacy from the face of the earth. This narrative is as much a cautionary tale as it is a story of lost grandeur. It speaks to the dangers of hubris, of the belief that a civilization can transcend the natural world, that it is beyond the consequences of its actions, and that its power can protect it from moral and ethical failure. In the case of Atlantis, the very things that had made the civilization great, its connection to nature, its sense of justice, its reverence for the gods, were discarded in favor of expansion, conquest, and greed. The more they sought to control and dominate, the more they severed their ties to the higher principles that had once guided them. In the end, it was this disconnection from their true nature, from the virtues that had once made them great, that led to their destruction. In many ways, the story of Atlantis serves as an allegory for the rise and fall of human societies throughout history. Time and again, we have seen civilizations ascend to great heights, only to fall victim to the very forces they once harnessed for their own benefit. The ancient Egyptians, for example, were once seen as the epitome of wisdom and power, with their advanced knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. But over time, the once flourishing civilization became mired in political instability, corruption, and social inequality. The Roman Empire, too, grew from humble beginnings into one of the most powerful empires in history, only to collapse under the weight of its own moral and political rot. The fall of both empires can be seen as a reflection of the same forces that led to the downfall of Atlantis: the gradual erosion of core values, the pursuit of unchecked power, and the abandonment of the principles that had once sustained them. The idea that moral decay leads to the downfall of a civilization is not just a historical observation, but also a philosophical and psychological one. It speaks to the inherent tension between the pursuit of material wealth and power on the one hand, and the need for spiritual and ethical grounding on the other. As civilizations grow and expand, there's a natural temptation to focus on external achievements, on the construction of grand monuments, the accumulation of wealth, and the expansion of territories. These are the visible signs of success, the markers of a civilization's dominance. But in doing so, the focus shifts away from the internal virtues that are necessary for sustaining a just and harmonious society. The result is a growing disconnect between a society's external achievements and its internal health, which ultimately leaves it vulnerable to collapse. This tension is particularly evident in modern society. As technology has advanced at an unprecedented rate, and as globalization has connected the world in ways that were once unimaginable, we find ourselves increasingly focused on material progress, on economic growth, technological innovation, and political power. Yet, despite these achievements, we are confronted by an array of challenges that seem to be growing more insurmountable with each passing year. Climate change, social inequality, political polarization, and a growing sense of disillusionment all point to a deeper crisis within society. It is as though, in our pursuit of external success, we have lost sight of the internal values that once held society together. Values such as justice, equality, compassion, and respect for the natural world. The fall of Atlantis, in this sense, is not just a myth about a long-lost civilization, but a mirror to our own time. It forces us to confront the possibility that, like the Atlanteans, we too may be on a path toward moral and spiritual decay, a path that could lead to our own undoing if we do not change course. The story of Atlantis asks us to examine the consequences of our actions, both on a societal level and on a personal one. It challenges us to reflect on the values that guide our civilization, and to question whether we are truly living in alignment with those values, or whether we have become consumed by the pursuit of power and material gain. This self-examination is not an easy one, nor is a new one. Throughout history, there have been individuals and groups who have called for a return to the values that underpinned great civilizations in the past. Many religious and philosophical traditions emphasize the importance of inner wisdom, humility, and balance, calling for individuals to cultivate virtues such as compassion, integrity, and self-awareness. These teachings suggest that true greatness is not achieved through external achievements, but through the cultivation of one's inner character. If we are to avoid the fate of Atlantis, we must heed these teachings and recognize that the greatest threat to our civilization may not be external forces, but internal ones: the loss of moral clarity, the breakdown of social cohesion, and the erosion of our ethical foundation. The idea that Atlantis serves as a cautionary tale is further supported by the way in which the myth continues to resonate with people today. For centuries, the Atlantis myth has served as a symbol of both the heights to which humanity can aspire and the depths to which it can fall. It speaks to our desire for greatness, our need for connection, and our search for meaning. But it also reminds us that these aspirations can lead to destruction if we are not careful, if we lose sight of what truly matters and allow ourselves to be consumed by the very things that once made us great. The myth of Atlantis, in this way, is both a warning and a call to action. It asks us to examine our own society and our own values, and to consider whether we are truly on the path to greatness, or whether we are repeating the same mistakes that have led to the downfall of countless civilizations before us. The question of how to avoid the fate of Atlantis is ultimately one that each generation must answer for itself. There is no easy solution, no simple formula for ensuring the survival of our civilization. But the story of Atlantis does offer us valuable lessons. It reminds us that the greatest achievements are not those that can be measured by material wealth or power, but those that are rooted in virtue, wisdom, and a deep respect for the natural world. It urges us to look beyond the surface of things and to cultivate the inner qualities that are necessary for a just, harmonious, and sustainable society. The fall of Atlantis, while tragic, is not just a story of loss. It is a story of potential, a reminder that we are capable of achieving great things, but only if we remain grounded in the values that truly matter. In the end, the myth of Atlantis is not just a reflection of the past, but a mirror to our present and future. It forces us to confront the deeper truths about ourselves and our society, and to recognize that the fate of civilizations is never truly sealed until the moral and ethical foundations upon which they are built are eroded. If we are to avoid the fall of Atlantis, we must learn to honor the values that sustain us, and to never lose sight of the balance between external success and internal integrity. Only then can we hope to build a civilization that endures, not just for a few generations, but for the ages to come. The influence of Atlantis, though it may have disappeared beneath the ocean long ago, has continued to reverberate through history, leaving an indelible mark on various cultures, philosophies, and belief systems. Its myth, whether as a literal civilization or a powerful metaphor, has not only persisted, but has evolved into a key symbol of human potential and the cyclical nature of rise and fall. The question remains, how does this mythical civilization continue to shape the world in the present day? And what are the unseen influences of Atlantis that can still be felt in modern times? One of the most fascinating aspects of Atlantis is how it has managed to find its way into the collective consciousness of different societies over the millennia. From the earliest texts of the Greeks to the mysticism of the Renaissance and into the modern era, the legend of Atlantis has been reinterpreted, reimagined, and transformed. Each generation seems to find something relevant in the story, using it as a lens through which they can better understand their own cultural or spiritual dilemmas. The power of this myth is that it does not remain static. It adapts to the needs and concerns of those who engage with it. Whether through the search for lost knowledge, the desire to revive a golden age, or as a warning against overreaching ambition, Atlantis has remained a central fixture in the way humanity looks at its potential and its fragility. A crucial part of the legacy of Atlantis lies in the way its myth has been woven into secret societies and esoteric traditions. The idea that there was once a highly advanced civilization, now lost to time, has been an irresistible force for those seeking hidden wisdom and knowledge. The connection between Atlantis and such groups is not merely coincidental. Throughout history, esoteric orders have perpetuated the belief that there are ancient, hidden truths about humanity's past that have been deliberately concealed. Some believe that the Atlanteans, with their advanced knowledge, passed down key teachings to these secret societies, whose members believe that the wisdom of Atlantis could guide them toward higher spiritual consciousness or greater political power. The esoteric traditions that grew out of the Renaissance, such as the Hermetic teachings and the Rosicrucians, often referenced Atlantis as a lost but idealized civilization. These societies placed great value on the wisdom of the ancients and believed that by uncovering the secrets of Atlantis, they could uncover the lost knowledge that would propel humanity to a higher plane of understanding. One of the most well-known symbols tied to these esoteric traditions is the idea of the ancient mysteries, or a secret wisdom that transcends the physical realm. The belief that Atlantis was a cradle of such wisdom has led to its incorporation in a wide variety of mystical and philosophical systems. Some proponents of these ideas suggest that the Atlanteans had access to advanced scientific knowledge that allowed them to manipulate energy, understand the cosmos, and even harness the forces of nature in ways that modern technology has yet to replicate. The idea that such knowledge has been passed down through various channels, such as secret societies, is alluring to those who believe that humanity is capable of far more than what is commonly known. In this view, Atlantis represents not only a lost civilization, but also the pinnacle of human achievement, an achievement that, if rediscovered, could change the course of human history. Even in the modern age, there are those who continue to seek out the hidden remnants of Atlantis. For many, the myth has become a symbol of the pursuit of a forgotten truth, something buried in the sands of time, waiting to be uncovered. Archaeologists, adventurers, and theorists alike have sought to locate the physical remnants of Atlantis, whether through undersea exploration, the analysis of ancient texts, or the identification of long-forgotten cities that could serve as the inspiration for Plato's description. Sites such as the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, and Antarctica have all been suggested as possible locations for Atlantis, with various theories being advanced as to how the island could have been destroyed. While the search for Atlantis as a literal place remains elusive, the quest for understanding the origins and nature of human civilization has only intensified. The idea that ancient civilizations might have once possessed knowledge and technologies far beyond what we currently understand has inspired a variety of scientific explorations, from the study of ancient energy systems to the search for lost cities beneath the sea. Though these explorations are often shrouded in mystery and speculation, they demonstrate the ongoing influence of the Atlantis myth in shaping modern investigations into the unknown. The cultural and intellectual influence of Atlantis also extends to a variety of literary works, artistic expressions, and popular culture. From the time of Plato, the myth has captured the imaginations of writers, philosophers, and artists who have sought to bring the story to life through their own mediums. Writers like Francis Bacon, who in his utopian work The New Atlantis envisioned an advanced society built on knowledge and scientific inquiry, have sought to portray Atlantis as the archetype of human potential. In this way, Atlantis became a touchstone for ideals such as enlightenment, progress, and the promise of a society that thrives on wisdom and the harmonious integration of technology and spirituality. These themes have continued to resonate in the modern world, where Atlantis is often invoked in discussions about ideal societies or the future of humanity. The myth has been used to question the direction of modern civilization, drawing attention to the dangers of unchecked progress or materialism, and serving as a cautionary tale against neglecting the moral and spiritual dimensions of human existence. Popular culture has also played a significant role in perpetuating the myth of Atlantis, turning it into a fixture of modern storytelling. From novels to films, television shows, and video games, Atlantis has been depicted as everything from a lost paradise to a dark and dangerous place. Its portrayal in modern media often reflects contemporary fears and aspirations, tapping into the collective desire for adventure, discovery, and the uncovering of ancient secrets. Movies like Atlantis, The Lost Empire, and Journey to the Center of the Earth have turned the myth into a source of excitement and intrigue, allowing audiences to imagine what it might be like to uncover the long-lost city. These portrayals, while often fantastical, reflect a deep-seated longing for a connection to something greater, something ancient, that might provide answers to the questions of human existence. Through these stories, Atlantis serves as a symbol not only of what has been lost, but also of the boundless potential for discovery that still exists in the world today. The myth of Atlantis also offers a powerful lens through which to examine the modern human condition. In a world increasingly dominated by technology, globalization, and environmental crisis, many feel a profound sense of disconnection from nature and the spiritual realms. Atlantis, in its original form, represented a harmonious integration of advanced technology, natural beauty, and spiritual wisdom. It stood as a model of what might be possible if humanity could balance progress with a deep respect for the forces that govern the world around us. In the modern era, with the rapid acceleration of technological development and the growing concerns over climate change and ecological degradation, there is an increasing sense that something fundamental has been lost. The myth of Atlantis, therefore, takes on a contemporary relevance. It asks us to reconsider our relationship with the world, our pursuit of material success, and the values that guide our society. Atlantis becomes a metaphor for a time when humanity was more in tune with the earth, a time when the pursuit of knowledge and power was balanced by wisdom and humility. In addition to its intellectual, cultural, and spiritual influences, the myth of Atlantis continues to be a source of political inspiration for those who seek a return to a more idealized way of living. Various political and social movements, particularly those focused on environmental sustainability and social justice, have drawn parallels between Atlantis and the need for a society that values balance, community, and ethical governance. The idea that Atlantis was a society that flourished when it adhered to certain principles, justice, harmony with nature, and mutual respect, has inspired movements that aim to recreate these values in the face of modern challenges. Some see Atlantis as a model for an ideal society that integrates scientific progress with ecological responsibility, promoting a vision of the future that embraces both technological advancement and spiritual enlightenment. In this sense, the Atlantis myth not only serves as a cautionary tale, but also as a blueprint for how humanity might move forward, learning from past mistakes while striving for a more harmonious and sustainable existence. The idea that Atlantis represents a hidden source of wisdom, one that can guide humanity toward a brighter future, is a central theme in many contemporary discussions about the future of humanity. Whether through the rediscovery of ancient knowledge, the cultivation of inner wisdom, or the pursuit of a more balanced and integrated society, the myth continues to serve as a powerful symbol of what might be possible. The story of Atlantis, in all its various forms, invites us to question our current trajectory, to reflect on the lessons of the past, and to imagine a future where humanity once again reaches its full potential, not through dominance or exploitation, but through wisdom, humility, and a deep connection to the world around us. Ultimately, the unseen influence of Atlantis is not limited to its physical remnants or the ideas of secret societies. It lives on in the ways we understand ourselves, our society, and our potential. Through its continued presence in literature, art, popular culture, and even politics, the myth serves as a constant reminder that the lessons of the past, both the achievements and the mistakes, are always with us. Whether as a literal civilization or a symbolic ideal, Atlantis urges us to strive for something greater, to balance our technological and material progress with spiritual insight and ethical responsibility, and to remain vigilant against the forces of pride and corruption that can so easily undo what we build. It is this persistent, unseen influence that continues to shape our worldview, compelling us to ask, what happened to Atlantis, and how can its lessons guide us today? The narrative of Atlantis is one that speaks of a civilization that reached extraordinary heights, only to see its grandeur consumed by internal decay and external destruction. While the ancient texts describing Atlantis are vague and often shrouded in allegory, they hint at a lost world that was once the pinnacle of human achievement. But what makes this myth even more captivating is the idea that the wisdom and knowledge of Atlantis, even if physically lost, may have left behind an enduring legacy. Could there be traces of Atlantis embedded within modern civilization, waiting to be rediscovered? And if so, how might the principles of that lost world influence our contemporary understanding of history, spirituality, and the nature of human potential? The concept of lost wisdom is not exclusive to the Atlantis myth. Across many cultures, there are stories of ancient knowledge, divine revelation, or esoteric teachings that were lost or hidden over time. The idea that there were once superior beings who understood the deeper mysteries of life, the universe, and existence, only for their knowledge to fade into obscurity, is a powerful and recurring theme in human mythology. It is the belief in a golden age, a time when humanity was more connected to divine truths, that continues to inspire individuals and movements across the world. In the case of Atlantis, the story not only implies the existence of such knowledge, but suggests that its fall came because of the very misuse of that knowledge, an abuse of power, ambition, and greed, which ultimately led to a civilization's collapse. Atlantis, in this sense, represents both the heights of human achievement and the depths of human failure. The island of Atlantis, as Plato described it, was a paradise. It was a place where the laws of nature and divine order were fully understood, where technology and wisdom coexisted harmoniously, and where its people had the potential to live in peace and prosperity. The Atlantis myth presents a world in which civilization has achieved an almost perfect state of balance, an advanced society without the excesses and flaws that would later plague other civilizations. The Atlanteans were said to possess not only advanced technology and architecture, but also a deep understanding of the spiritual forces governing the universe. The balance of material prosperity and spiritual wisdom made them unique in the ancient world, serving as a model for what could be achieved if humanity were to live in harmony with the natural order. But the Atlanteans' downfall came when they lost sight of this delicate balance. The pursuit of power, wealth, and conquest led to the degradation of their spiritual and moral foundations. As their empire expanded, their connection to the divine and the natural world weakened. They became increasingly corrupted by their own success, falling prey to greed, arrogance, and a belief in their own invincibility. The myth of Atlantis, in this sense, is a tragedy, a warning about the dangers of losing sight of what truly matters, of neglecting the very virtues that enabled a civilization to rise in the first place. It suggests that once humanity loses its connection to higher principles, once it begins to prioritize material gain over spiritual understanding, it is on the road to its own destruction. The fall of Atlantis, then, is not just a story about a lost civilization, but a universal metaphor for the destructive consequences of moral and ethical decay. The intriguing part of the Atlantis myth, however, is the suggestion that the knowledge and wisdom of this lost civilization may not have been completely wiped out. Some have posited that the wisdom of Atlantis was not simply lost to the sea, but preserved in hidden forms, whether in secret societies, in the teachings of ancient mystery schools, or encoded in sacred texts. These hidden fragments of knowledge could have been passed down through generations, protected by those who understood their significance. From the time of Plato to the present day, there have been numerous claims of esoteric traditions that seek to preserve and pass on the teachings of Atlantis. From the ancient Egyptian priests to the mystics of the Renaissance and the modern-day occult groups, many have pointed to Atlantis as a symbol of the lost wisdom that could unlock a deeper understanding of the universe and humanity's true potential. These teachings, according to some, are not merely intellectual or scientific in nature, but are spiritual in their core. They speak of a deeper, more profound understanding of existence, a connection to the divine and the forces that shape the cosmos. The idea of a spiritual science, where knowledge of the natural world is intertwined with a deep reverence for the divine, is central to many esoteric systems. Atlantis, in this view, becomes a symbol of a time when humanity understood the true nature of existence, when the material world was seen as a reflection of a higher spiritual reality. This worldview, which was said to have been passed down through secret societies and spiritual traditions, suggests that the collapse of Atlantis was not just the fall of civilization, but a spiritual crisis, a severing of the connection between humanity and the divine order. In many ways, this loss of spiritual wisdom can be seen as a major factor in the challenges facing humanity today. While modern civilization has made great strides in technological and scientific advancement, there's a growing sense that something is missing, that in our pursuit of material progress, we have lost touch with the deeper aspects of life. The rapid pace of technological development, the rise of consumerism, and the degradation of the natural environment have left many questioning the true purpose of human existence. As a result, there is a growing interest in spiritual practices, esoteric teachings, and ancient wisdom traditions that offer a more holistic approach to life. The search for Atlantis, then, is not only about uncovering lost cities or ancient technologies, but about reconnecting with the spiritual wisdom that is believed to have once guided humanity. This longing for a more integrated understanding of life is reflected in the growing movement toward holistic spirituality and alternative belief systems. Across the world, there is a resurgence of interest in mysticism, astrology, sacred geometry, and other ancient systems of knowledge. Many people are turning to these traditions in an effort to reclaim the deeper wisdom that they believe has been lost in the modern world. The idea that Atlantis was a civilization that possessed such wisdom, and that this wisdom may still be accessible to us, is a source of both inspiration and hope. It suggests that there is a hidden knowledge within us all, a potential for spiritual and intellectual growth that can be unlocked if we are willing to look beyond a material world and reconnect with the higher truths that guide the universe.